let's go. Welcome to my students and welcome to the participants online. I'm Anna Brusarosco, I'm a geographer, and I'm the teacher of this course, Alternatives to Development and Territorial Practices of Post-Development of the Master CCD-STeDe course. And yeah, just a few words for our online participants that maybe don't know this course. My course is dedicated to a critical discussion about the concept of development. So the idea is to promote critical thinking about this concept, but we don't want just to criticize the concept, but also to propose and to discuss alternatives based on the concept of pluriverse, that is a word in which many words fit. So the idea is that we can change and face the criticalities of our world in terms of climate change, justice, political organization, and so on. And we don't have just one solution, one unique receipt, but we can and we have to develop different solutions, different alternatives based on different knowledges, different values, different way of considering our world, the time, and so on. And so in this frame, I've decided to propose a couple of experiences, concrete experiences of alternatives. And the first one this week is about the Kurdish questions. And I'm very glad to introduce and to have here my colleague Federico Venturini. He worked with me at the University of Udine, but he is not only a researcher, he's an activist. And I think he has a very interesting experience and can give you an insight about the Kurdish situation, about the alternative developed in that area. So Federico, the stage is yours. And thank you very much to be here with us.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for the invitation and thank you for to be here. I'm very glad to have the chance to discuss and to present around the Kurdish question. I think that is our duty. When I speak our, mean we as researchers. I think that we have a duty to not only disseminate what we are doing in the society, but it's also our duty to contribute to social change in order to foster not just theory, but also practices around justice, human rights, ecology, role of the women, and so on. So this topic is very close to my heart. Doesn't give a lot of possibility to talk, unfortunately. So again, I'm happy to be here. So how many of you are familiar with the Kurdish question? Just to have a general understanding, okay? Anyone of you have been there in Turkey, for example? Not in Turkey. Anyone that collaborated with the Kurdish movement as an activist? Okay. So I will give you some information around that. So I'm a geographer, formally. There? Ah, okay. I'm a geographer, so I will use a lot of maps. And after the maps, we will have some images, and then after the images, we will have a lot of text. So this is the structure of today's presentation. So this is a bit of the context, geographical context of the Middle East. And that is, of course, the connection between two big areas, the Europe and then Asia. Okay, Asia is a very diverse continent. We can open a discussion also around what does it mean to be in Asia. But we'll focus on the Middle East. Middle East is very important because it's the connection point between very big piece of land and it's very rich from economically with oil. So it's not just about where oil is extracted, but also how oil is transported. On top of that, Middle East, and especially this part with Turkey as well, was fundamental during the last century, but even now, in order to be a barrier against the Russian or the Soviet Union expansion. And I'm speaking about from a Western perspective. Okay, so we will speak about the role of Turkey in NATO, for example, in order to block the Soviet Union there. And this is the area that we are taking into consideration today. So let's go back, not to the beginning, but 1 century ago, more than 1 century ago, to the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So in 2016, two guys, they met together. One was French, another was an English man, and they decided to split the Middle East at the end of the First World War. That was a very classical colonial approach. So this was the influence part of this was the part was directly meant to be occupied by France. This was the areas of influence of France. This was the areas of influence for the British Empire. This was directly occupied by the British Empire. We know this. That was Palestine, and before 1947 and so on. And then there was also a discussion here. There was, we can see better in the next slide. There was the idea of Armenia that was under the influence of the Russian Empire. Okay, this is a different map from the same Sykes-Picot Agreement, more clear to see. So this is the beginning of the end, let's say, of the Kurds, because before there was the Ottoman Empire for many centuries, and of course it was an empire. However, they had all the different minorities and all the different nationalities. They had kind of autonomy and freedom within the Ottoman Empire. I don't want to romanticize that period of time. However, from that time on, the situation of the Kurds was much more harsh, because the Kurds were split between different countries, and the idea, the project of nation building came from Western colonies, from Western countries. So they used the Middle East, they used to split the Middle East through Western ideas, and that came from that time, from that agreement. So this is Kurdistan, and it doesn't exist. Okay. I really like this map because it's a connection of different layers. You can see that there are borders, but you don't have a border here. Okay. So this is where the yellow part is where the majority of the population is Kurd. Okay. So you can see that is in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, and Turkey. These are the four major areas, okay? But of course, there are some also bits that are not interconnected. So the region in Turkey is called Bakur. The region in Syria is called Rojava or Rojava. The part in Iraq is Bashur, and the part in Iran is Rojilat. So these are the four major, the four regions of Kurdistan. That doesn't exist. And for the Kurdish freedom movement, they don't want anymore the construction of a nation state. So just put here, they don't want to have an independent Kurdish state. And we will go back again on this concept later, okay? But this should be very, very, very clear. And is also one of the most interesting point that we can discuss, and that is also relevant to your course. So they really change the paradigm for a national liberation movement. They don't want to have independence, they want to have autonomy within the existing borders. We will explain a bit more later. So, Middle East is a very complex area where different ethnic groups live and coexist. The green, dark green are the Kurds, the same map that we saw before. But we can see that there are many other ethnic groups, all in Middle East, especially in Turkey. Turkey is very diverse, and Syria as well, especially in the north part. Okay, this is very important because the Kurdish project that is called Democratic Confederalism speaks not only to the Kurds, but the idea is to include all the different ethnicity they want to be part of in this project. So it's not based on a specific nationality or on a specific ethnic group, but the idea is pacific coexistence and participation of these different ethnicities. This because they realized through years of practice that they have to be able somehow to include all the different minorities that were living even within their territories. Okay, and they didn't want to be the classical West state that oppress their citizens or their minorities. Yeah, okay, cool. So let's speak a bit about Bakur, so in Turkey. In this map, this is from 4 years ago, but it shows the military presence of Turkey in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean area. So Turkey is the second largest army in NATO. And as I mentioned before, the existence of Turkey in NATO was fundamental, especially during the Cold War, in order to block the Soviet Union to get a foothold on the Mediterranean Sea. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union had a military base, naval base in Syria. And there was an antagonistic relationship between Turkey and Syria. So Syria was aligned with the Soviet bloc, while Turkey was with the Western. So Turkey has been for more than a century a bit in between Europe and Middle East. Is a quite unique case where Kemal Atatürk, that was the general that fought against the Western forces at the end of the First World War, and is the father of Turkey, the modern Turkey. He was Turkish nationalist, of course, was a Muslim, but at the same time was also secular. So he wanted to have a state that was secular, was not dogmatic or with a religion, not similarly to other countries in the Middle East. So that is quite unique, even if in the last 20 years this situation is changing, and also in the civic life, the religion is gaining a much more prominent role in Turkey. So why Ataturk did that? Because he wanted to copy the West and the power of the Western states. So you want to have, you want to, can I say, follow the path of development of the Western countries. And he believed that that was a fundamental aspect for the state to be strong. Okay. So Turkey is a NATO ally. However, is messing a lot with Greece, that is also NATO ally, because Greece has these islands that Turkey believes that belongs to them. Another point of conflict is Cyprus, that is split since the 70s into different areas. And this is the north part of Cyprus is occupied by Turkey and is recognized only by Turkey. The other part is the officially recognized worldwide Cyprus, that is also in Europe. And this point of tension is also not very recognized on the international sphere. But then Turkey has some military base also in Libya. In Sudan, they are building a military base here. Somalia as well, some military, Qatar, Iraq, many, and Syria. In Azerbaijan. During the war a few years ago, Turkey was almost directly involved in Azerbaijan, and it directly provided a lot of weapons to rage against a war against Armenia. There's also an enemy to Turkey in Afghanistan as well. So Turkey is a NATO ally, but is not very reliable. For example, they decided to buy the anti-aerial system from Russia, and this is why the United States blocked some war airplane, the selling of some war airplane. That is a good thing for the Kurds, but we can discuss later. So Turkey is again on the side of the West, but at the same time is playing its game. And this is what they would like to have. This, of course, is from online. It's not reliable from a scientific point of view, but it's just to give a glimpse on the idea that in many circles, even from the Turkish official, they are talking about building again a Turkish empire. So, and to expand their influence in the Middle East and beyond. Okay. So this phenomenon is called Neo-Ottomanism, okay, to bring back the idea of the Ottoman Empire built in the new century. This is something that I just mentioned that is not very well known. So we are in Iraq, this is Iraq, this is Syria, Turkey, so we are in the southeast part of Turkey, this is Iran. And all the red dots are airstrike, and the biggest icons are Turkish military bases. Because in this area, there are many Kurdish insurgency from the Kurdish liberation movement. And Turkey is directly occupying part of Iraq. I bet that no one of you knew that before. So it's a NATO country that is occupying several square kilometers of Turkey, of Iraq. Okay. So this is all occupied, and there are also some rumors of use of chemical weapons as well against the Kurdish population and also to the Kurdish fighters. This is Sinjar. For the people that will work on the Kurdish question, maybe it's relevant for you. Sinjar they're not, the majority of the population is not Kurd, but they are Yazidi. And when ISIS emerged, so ISIS wanted to massacre the Yazidi. And so they were they arrived, they had the Yazidi, they had to flee their homes. However, the Kurdish fighters arrived from the Kurdish liberation movement, and they managed to cover the retreat of the Yazidi and to avoid a massacre. So for this region, also the Yazidi are following the idea of democratic confederalism. At the same time, there is also here Bakur is a refugee camp of Kurdish refugees that since the 90s are living there under the protection of the UN, but they are not receiving any attention from the international community, and at the same time the Turkish state is bombarding them because again they are following the ideas of democratic confederalism. So these are some of the logos of the different political parties of Turkey that are close to the Kurdish political program. So why I decided to put them here? Because I want to show that through years, from the beginning of the 90s, the first is from 1990, you can see this DTP 2005, HDP 1997, the and so on. So they participate in election at the national, state, or regional level. And they managed to gain some seats at the parliament or some municipalities. But then the Turkish state accused them to be terrorists. We can go in this discussion later. And so they managed to close the party. But then the Kurdish movement, they decided, okay, they close one, we can make another one. So it shows that there is a lot of repression. And from my understanding, it's very weird that terrorist organizations want to have a party all the time. And they want to build with different names, but it's very often is present the word of democratic or popular. So this D is for popular and democratic and so on. So just to show the level of repression, the HDP is the last party that is also under consideration for closure, and there is a new one that I didn't put on this list with very similar logo. So let's move to Syria. I understand that I'm giving some information, but for the end you will have a clear picture. So let's go to Rojava in Syria. So I don't know how much you are familiar with ISIS. Was this terrorist organization that managed in something that was quite unique in 2015, managed to change the political geographical landscape of the Middle East. So that is, the ISIS was the only political actor that managed to break the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. So they build a state with two different capitals. One was Raqqa in Syria, and the other was Mosul in Iraq. They were fundamentalist Islamist, and also with the support of West powers. Both the Iraqi government, the Kurd, the Syrian siding with Assad and supported also with Russia, they managed to defeat ISIS. So they don't exist anymore as a state entity as they were at the peak in 2015, but they have different terrorist cells both in Syria and in Iraq. Okay, I can speak for hours on this map, but let's move on. So this is very important because In 2011, there was the start of the Syrian civil war. No one is from Syria, is that correct? No. So there was the Arab Spring in 2010. In 2011, the popular movements, the popular uprising against the government of Assad morphed in a civil war due to the heavy repression in Syria. So originally, there were two actors. On one side, the loyalists to Assad, and on the other side, there were the democratic force or the anti-loyalist. And then the Kurds at the beginning, they stayed a bit on a side. We saw at the beginning the Kurds, the majority of the Kurds are here, and here, especially on the border with Turkey. This is Kobane. At the beginning of the Arab Spring, they didn't want to participate too much because they were heavily repressed during the 90s, and even before. They were not able to have a passport. They were like B citizens, okay? They didn't have freedom to move. The area was left underdeveloped. Okay, so for your group, this is important. All this part of Syria was, the majority of the Kurds population lived there, was purposely left underdeveloped, and they developed mainly mono agriculture, wheat, if I'm correct. In that way, it was very good because they had the food for the rest of Syria, but at the same time, they managed to control the Kurdish population because they didn't give development to that region. Okay, so the state controlled that area through management, through economic management. Okay, and also imposition of the language, negation of human rights, and so on. But there was also this aspect. So let's push forward to 2011. So 2011 was the start of the civil war in Syria. And at the time, the Kurds decided to take arms and to defend themselves. So they managed to have autonomous areas along the border with Turkey. Because mainly the loyalists to Assad decided to withdraw and to bring the troops towards the center. Okay, center, the capital is here, Damascus. Okay, so they retreat towards the coast and Damascus under the pressure of the opposition and of ISIS as well. So Syria managed to have the support, as I mentioned, of the Russian. Even now, they have the support of Putin. So in 2015, ISIS was at the peak, and they put under siege Kobane. Do you remember? Have you heard Kobane? No? Okay. So it's a Kurdish city on the border with Turkey. It was very important. ISIS was conquering all the area around and arrived in the city. But at that point, the Turkish state decided to block and to close and to fence off all the border. So the border was closed. So the Kurdish population cannot escape. They had to face ISIS. So a NATO ally that was providing weapons to ISIS, and we have videos and proofs of that. And on top of that, they decided to block the border. So not even the Kurds on the Turkish state, on the Kurdish state, can go and support the Kurds in Kobane, but neither the people from Kobane could flee from ISIS. So Kobane was the point of resistance for the Kurds, and they managed to survive, let's be clear, because there was the area support of US. So the Kurdish Liberation Movement decided to make an alliance with the US that provide aerial support and light weapons to the YPG and the YPJ, that are the two military branches of the Kurdish Liberation Forces. YPG, YPJ. This is the male branch, and this is the women branch of the army. So ISIS was defeated on the ground by the Kurdish forces with the support of the aerial power of US. So the Kurdish Liberation Movement is a very close ally of the West. ISIS was mainly defeated in Syria because of the Kurds. So we should not forget that. Okay. I think this is quite well summarized the situation of what happened at the time, but also is what is happening now, because still Turkey is supporting terrorists in the Kurdish areas. This is Erdogan, the president. These are the Kurds, and yeah. And that happened again in 2018 when we betrayed the Kurds again. There is a very famous quote that said, the only friends of the Kurds are the mountains. So the mountains, the Kurds, they don't have ally in the Middle East because they are very different. For example, from a language point of view, the Kurd is closer, is an Indo-European language, is not an Arab language, and also is quite secular movement. And so they don't have many allies. This is why also the international solidarity on the Kurds is different from the solidarity that the Palestinians receive. Okay, they are a bit of the pariah in the Middle East. So on the top of this nice image, we have the defense of Kobane, when we all cheer on the West when the Kurds were fighting against ISIS. But then in 2018, Afrin is Afrin is this part here, that for centuries the majority of the population was Kurd. 95% of the population was Kurd. But then in 2018, the Turkish army decided to invade that part. So even a part, large chunk, many chunks of Syria, they are occupied, directly occupied by Turkey. Not only in Afrin, but also in others. Like in many operations, first was here, and here, Afrin, and also this part. This is now occupied by Turkey. This is the different areas of control in Syria in 2020, and the situation is pretty much the same. So, are you familiar with this map? Is it the first time? So, when you see a lot of colors on a map, it means that it's a mess. Okay, so let me explain. So the blue is the loyalist to Assad. Okay, this is the occupation of the Golan Heights from Israel. I don't want to go in the discussion. This is Lebanon. Okay, so this is Syria. This part is the area that has been liberated by the Kurdish Liberation Movement, even if not all we saw before that the majority of the population is Kurd only here on the border. We can see also in the next part, so try to memorize this triangle, okay, of Syria. And if we go to the next, this again, this is the triangle, okay, that I highlighted before. And you can see that the majority of the Kurds are yellow, but then there are also many Arabs, Turkomans in this part, Circassians, Assyrians, Armenians, Chechens. So this triangle is very diverse. Let's say that the idea this area is not only Kurds are living here and following, trying to implement a project of democratic confederalism, but many different groups. Okay? This happened also from a geographical, geopolitical strategy that the West, especially the US, pushed the Kurds to fight ISIS beyond the borders of the Kurdish area, because the US recognized the role, the effectiveness of the Kurds on the ground of the army. So they decided, okay, it's better if we defeat ISIS and not let's wait for Assad and the Russian. The Kurds decided, okay, we can do that. But then after the defeat of ISIS, in the last few years, they had, okay, but how can we implement our project in areas that are not mainly populated by Kurds? That was not the idea, initial idea. They don't want to have, of course, to impose. They don't want to colonize another part. So there is this. There is the idea. The project is to build together the communities, but this is another layer of complexity to the situation that is there. Of course, there is an important shift when we speak about this part. We are not speaking about Rojava. Rojava formally is only the part here. Remember the initial white yellow map. So this part is the Confederation of North and East of Syria. They change even the name of the entity. We will go back to that in order to show that the project is not an ethnic project based on the Kurd nationality, but is for all the people living in that area. Okay. So we are speaking about this. Then we saw also the occupation. The red areas are directly occupied by Turkey, and this is Idlib. So Idlib initially was one of the strongholds of the Syrian opposition. This is where the Arab Spring was very strong, where the civil war started. But then through the war, all the ISIS, all the opposition, all the different all the opposition that were defeated, they were moved to Idlib. So, for example, ISIS that was defeated here, or that the opposition that was defeated here, they moved further west and north, and they are all in Idlib now. So they change the demographic. There are many former combatants of ISIS. They are not even from the Middle East. They are not even from Syria. Many from West countries as well. Okay, so Idlib is quite unique situation worldwide. Okay, I think is yes, I forgot this part. So this is mainly desert. Here we have Palmyra, and this is part of it's an opposition group, and you say, why you have an opposition here in the middle of the desert, close to the border with Jordan and Iraq? Well, it's very simple, because there is a military base that is occupied by US that is very strategic. So this is the perimeter of the anti-aerial guns of the US, and so the Assad cannot enter this area. So it's opposition, Syrian opposition, let's say US base there. So I mentioned already about the ethnic composition of this territory. That is not, they are not only Kurds. Kobane is here, I think. Yeah, could be here. No, I don't remember. Well, this is the border with Turkey. Okay, this is the other part of, and this is Raqqa. Raqqa was the former capital of ISIS in Syria. So when the Kurds managed to conquer Raqqa, there was a huge turning point, and it showed to the rest of the world that the fighters that defeated ISIS in Syria, they were the Kurds, even if we forget that. So let's try to go a bit deeper in the theory, because I just spoke for 40 minutes around geopolitics. So the idea is democratic confederalism. Okay, this is from many years ago. This is from a book, Revolution in Rojava, from Erkan Ayboga, that is a Kurdish activist. He is doing, he's also finished a PhD, I think. He's also a journalist. You can find online. So the name is outdated, but the division here is quite effective. So in this image, you can have you have the description on how the political project works on the ground. So how that area is organized. So you have on this part how the power flows from the ground. Okay? So at the bottom, we have the commune. The commune can be a village or a street between 30 and 400 households. Okay? So each commune have an assembly. And then the assembly at this level send delegates to a second level, to neighborhoods or council of different villages. They send the delegates to this. And then the delegates from the second level, they're going to the third level, and then to the fourth level. Okay. In that way, the power is flowing from the ground to encompass all the area of the confederation. This is the plan. Okay. At the same time, we have commissions. The commissions are defense, economics, free society, justice, political, civil society, ecology, women's council. So at each level, they have different commissions. And it's also very important that at each level, they have women council. The women council is quite unique. We should consider that the role of the women in the Middle East is very limited. And the role that the YPJ had in the Syrian civil war was very important. That goes beyond just the role that they had on the ground as an army, but they show to the rest of the population, that the oppressed women of centuries of oppression, that they could have a different role in society. So the YPJ is an example of empowerment also on the women. So they have this women council at all the levels, and they have the power to block all the laws, all the decisions that interfere with the life of women. Okay, let's think about this. Let's think this concept. So the women, this assembly, has the power to block any law, any decision that comes from the General Assembly at all the different levels. So let's think, for example, about abortion. I think it's very sensible that only women should decide about abortion. And us in the West, that we are the democracy, we don't implement that, but as a man, we decide on the body of the women. They are going beyond that with this perspective. Okay, so I think that is very advanced and is very different from our forms of democracy. I think that the most advanced democracy, I think that you are also explored that in the course. They are not just the regular democracy that we have here in Europe, but there are also examples all around the world. And here they are pretty advanced. Okay. I want to do that later. So I want to start a small journey because I just sketched a bit the geographical situation, but I want to speak a bit about myself, about my journey, and why I'm here to speak about the Kurdish question to you today. So this image is coming from 2016. It's from Bakur. I was there in a mission. Literally, I was there with a role as observer, as academic, as a mediator, part of different peace delegation. So I was there, and I was wait, it's not this one. And this is a region that is close to the Mount Ararat. That is very close. It's very important for monotheistic religions. I was there, quite fun. Seems like photos from a trip. It was. So this is one of the different trips that I have there. The Kurdish population, just to give a glimpse a bit of the. This is very similar, for example, to some of the landscape that we have in Friuli. But this is where there are a couple of more interesting stuff. This is 2016 in March. They have a celebration that is called Nevroz. Have you ever celebrated Nevroz? It's around 2021, 21st of March, and also it's not just one day. There are more days in the middle of March. There is a reference of a mythology that is very important to the Kurdish population that is linked to fire and to freedom against oppression. That is very ancient mythology. So here we are in Ahmed, Diyarbakir. Diyarbakir is the Turkish name. Ahmed is the Kurdish name. Ahmed is the biggest Kurdish city in all Middle East. Couple of millions people. In the background, you can see that there are condos. They are all the same. And because there was a rapid urbanization, especially in the 90s, because the Turkish state decided to build a lot of houses, and at the same time, in the 90s, there was a huge counter-insurgency movement that pushed the Kurdish population from the countryside to the big cities. So in the 90s, the Kurds were heavily repressed, and entire villages were totally destroyed. So the population moved towards the big cities. Okay. Again, also in this part, the Turkish state used the same strategy of the Syrian government. So poor infrastructures, not much of development in order to control that opposition. So in 2016, there was this celebration. You don't see them all in this picture. Here, you can glimpse there are 200,000 people. They are the biggest celebration for the Kurdish population. But the year before, there were 2 million. So we are speaking about 2015. There were 2 million people in this celebration. And 2015, there was also the resistance of Kobane. It's the same here. We are in the spring. Again, you can see the fire. You see a lot of flags. This image is also very important. That is also, I don't know, did we choose this for the flyer? Yes. Because for me, it's nice. A lot of colors, a lot of people, nice, cool. But there is an important aspect. There are many flags with different colors, with different logos. that means that there is a plurality of actors. Let's also show that within the Kurdish freedom movement, there are different voices and different perspectives as well. Okay, but of course there is also these are the flags of the YPG. This is the flag of the PKK. Abdullah Öcalan. Let's go. No, I don't. Yeah. Well, if you want to speak about the role of activist researcher, this was the entrance of the celebration of the Nevroz, and there were anti-tank, anti-riot tank from the police, and they were heavily armed. And you can see this guy was not very happy that I was taking photos because the police was there not to prevent attack to the Kurds, but they were policing the Kurds. So, for example, in that years, there were many bombs attacked from ISIS to the Kurds. So the police didn't perform any checks on my bags, on the bags of the people. They were the Kurdish movement. They were performing the search. So these people here, the police, the internal police was all Kurd. They made the checks for the bombs. And these policemen ran against with the gun. Right? You have to delete the photos. Yeah, okay. I will delete the photo. Not really. But of course, there are risks when you do research, when you take photos, and you have to be aware of what you have around, and so on. So I just stop here, and I want to explain why I was there. I was not just there for enjoy my time with the Kurdish friends or to take photos and to celebrate, but also I was there for, I was part of peace delegations. Because in 2015, when I was doing my PhD, I was working on the concept of social ecology as defined by Murray Bookchin. And I make a comparison between the idea of Murray Bookchin and Abdullah Öcalan. So Abdullah Öcalan is the main theorist behind democratic confederalism, and he was deeply influenced by social ecology. He explicitly said that in his writing. So many of the concepts are coming from social ecology. Is there anyone that is working on social ecology or with social ecology? So again? Okay, cool. Okay, so that is my background. I'm a social ecologist working on that, and then because I work, I make a connection with Öcalan, then the Kurdish freedom movement decided to invite me to be part of this delegation. Because I was a researcher, because I have the credibility, because I have the knowledge, I was there. What I did, well, we were a group of 10, 15 people. I went there a couple of times. And we spoke with different spokespersons from the civil society, with lawyers, with politicians, mainly from the Kurdish group, but not only, in order to have an understanding of what was going on there. Here we are outside a high security prison. We cannot enter. The main leader of the HDP, Selahattin Demirtas, since 2016 has been in prison, is there. The European Union said that this incarceration is illegal and should be free for many years, but Turkey is keeping Selahattin Demirtas with the terrorist charge in jail. So again, I don't know if you have discussed this, but the definition of terrorism, or to define someone a terrorist, is very controversial. There is not a clear definition on the international base of who is a terrorist and who is not. For example, the PKK, the People's Workers' Party, that is the main actor in the Kurdish freedom movement, that that initiated in 1978 and in 1981 started the armed struggle against Turkey, is designed as a terrorist organization. But we should, when you speak with someone, oh, that is a terrorist organization. Yes, but who defined that is a terrorist organization? For example, Turkey defined the PKK since the beginning of that as a terrorist organization, of course. But then the West designed the PKK as a terrorist organization only at the end of the 90s. And the PKK is recognized as a terrorist organization only by the West. The West, I mean US, Europe, Australia, Japan, and that's it. Latin America, Africa, the rest of Asia, they don't put in this list. But they consider the PKK as a national liberation movement. And that is a huge thing. Through history, we had similar examples of repression. For example, with the ANC in South Africa, Nelson Mandela and the ANC, they were considered terrorists. The same in Ireland, Northern Ireland, with the Troubles and so on. Only when they start, they have to legalize, they have to stop to consider part of the actor as a terrorist in order to start a peace process. If till we have this list, you cannot even start to talk, because a terrorist is the worst thing that you can be on the world. We all agree that is something horrible. So for the civil society and for state, there is no chance to discuss with the terrorist. So one of the aim of this peace mission was to break the narrative around this. And for example, this were again discussion around with the delegation in order to enter. And one of the role that we had in this delegation was to discuss, not with the civil society, not to have just events like today at the university, but to speak at the international level at the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is that part that is in Brussels and Strasbourg as well, that they work with human rights. And Turkey is part of the Council of Europe. Also Israel is part of the Council of Europe, and also Russia. Well, was Russia till 2 years ago, and then they were expelled. Okay, so the Council of Europe is something that is bigger. It's a bigger organization of just the usual suspect to be part of the European Union. Okay, so Turkey wanted to be part of Europe, and to be part of that agreement, they have to implement some changes in the laws, and they have to be part of the Council of Europe and follow some rules. For example, they have to take out from the criminal code the death penalty. That was also very important because Abdullah Öcalan was in prison in 1999, and he was charged with that penalty, but because Turkey is part of the Council of Europe, that was transformed in life imprisonment. Okay, so again, this when I was younger. This was with the big boss at the Council of Europe. This was the House of Lords in London. So I just wanted to show these images in order to understand that we can work at different levels as a researcher, as an activist researcher. We can. I was playing with the people from Brazil that I did my PhD working with social movements in Rio de Janeiro. So I was working with the people from the favelas. I was working with the students directly involved in the movement. But here is a totally different setting. So again, I was working at the Parliament, Council of Europe. And still the struggle is there. So while in Brazil, it was more direct action, building from the grassroots, building schools for the people in the favelas and so on. But we can work also on another level, that is working with politicians, with policymakers, that we also have to influence somehow. Let me specify that I'm coming from a very libertarian background, and at the beginning was quite hard. But if we are in solidarity with the social movement, and if that is what they're expecting from you, you can start to negotiate with yourself in order to understand which are the limits, that things that you can offer and that you can do in order to be in solidarity with them. Okay. So I think that as a researcher, I had the opportunity, I had the credential, being part of the university, to work also on that level on the behalf of the Kurdish freedom movement in order to enable the start of a peace process. Okay. And then there are also other levels, working with solidarity groups on the ground, sending money, supporting the lawyers, making the demonstrations, writing petitions. They are all part of the same strategy of the Kurdish liberation movement, but all the different actors can do something different. Okay. Okay. Can I speak till 6? Do you have things to do? Okay. Yeah. How long shall I speak more?
Half an hour.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, we can have another class with the Kurdish group. So between 2015 and 2016, there were many clashes. So when there was Kobane, okay, the resistance of Kobane that was on the border here. The Kurdish population was very fed up that the Turks didn't allow the Kurds to support Kobane, and they decided to declare autonomy. So these cities decided, okay, we're still part of Turkey, but the army cannot enter here. The state cannot enter in my neighborhood. The Turks they were quite fed up and pissed off, and so decided to bomb the cities, literally to bomb the cities. So I want to show you, this is the old neighborhood of Diyarbakir. Do you remember when we had the Nevroz, Ahmed? So this is November 2015, before the internal wars. And this is in the spring, well, July 2017. Can you see? So the Turkish army bombed their cities. So, and no one is speaking about this. There is even a united UN site, a mosque that was bulldozed. Okay, and now they are rebuilding all this area with condos and very fancy houses for rich Turkish, because they were the whole neighborhood. Can you see there were many small and narrow streets that were very effective for the resistance and guerrilla warfare inside the city. Yeah. Because maybe there were, no, I don't know the specific geography, but all the fights were within this. Here there are all the walls coming from the Roman times, and here I think that here they were the firstest fights. Yes, this is all the city of the name of the neighborhood is Sur in Diyarbakir, Ahmed. Okay, here that you can see that is more green, that is greener. There are all the walls from the Roman times. Okay, and they were blocked. So from 2015 till I don't know how many years ago, a couple of years ago, I think, till COVID maybe, no one could go there. When I was in Diyarbakir, I could not go there. They were off limits. Okay. So here again, from the field trip that I did, this is another city. It's Cizre, but the same period, the same thing happened also in Cizre. It was a war zone. So these are all neighborhoods that decided to have and to implement autonomy. And the Turkish state decided to suppress this. So I want to speak a bit more about the pillar of democratic confederalism. There are three pillars. One is missing here. I'm sorry. So the role of ecology, the role of women, and the role of direct democracy. So from a philosophical point of view, the PKK, thanks to the role of Abdullah Öcalan, managed to have a transition from a classical national liberation movement of Marxist and Maoist origin to something totally different. So they were born at the end of the 70s, when the national liberation movement, they were looking at the Soviet Union and to China as an inspiration, also as a military support. And the idea were based on two concepts. First, the party had to conquer the power. And the second, the idea they wanted to have a state. They want to be independent. And the Kurdish, they didn't have a lot of support internationally because the Kurds, they were part of the Turkish state. And the Turkish state was on the periphery at the time. So they were a national liberation movement within a state. And in that period, they started to think about Kurdistan as a colony inside another colony. Okay, so the Turks, there was a neo-colonial occupation of Kurdistan within Turkey that was already controlled by the Western powers. Okay, it was an internal colony. It's quite unique, and it was not very accepted on the left, for example, even in Turkey. So Turkish on the left, they were not very supportive of the Kurdish movement. But then, through the 90s, they went to an ideological transformation, and they said, oh, well, the Soviet Union collapsed, so maybe the role of the party, again, is creating only oppression, is not liberation and freedom as we wanted to do. And on the other side, they realized that the national liberation movement in Latin America, Africa, Asia, didn't bring real freedom to the people. But the people, they were still oppressed through neo-colonial control. Okay, so to build a new state means to build again a structure, a top-down structure. So they decided, we don't want to have that. We don't want to have an independent Kurdistan. And this shift was 2001, let's say at the beginning of the 2000s, there was this political shift. And it's very important to acknowledge that they don't want to have independence. So also the idea not to be independent is also important to build a dialogue and to show the international scene that they don't want to break borders. But again, they want to have autonomy in order to implement their form of democracy that we saw with geographical level, with different commissions, and also to implement, to push forward the role of women and also the role of ecology. I don't want to speak much about the role of women. I already mentioned something. The Kurdish liberation movement created a new science that is called genealogy. Gene is women, ology, science, genealogy. And they don't define themselves. It's not just they want to go beyond feminism, because they saw it that has been corrupted by Western influences. So they are building genealogy that is something different. So for the Kurdish group, this is something that you can look into. I just want to conclude with some references. I'm giving you all the slides if you want to have a look at the slides that I skipped. There are some quotes from Öcalan that they are telling about a bit of information about the role of Kurdistan, why is it very important, that region, and some basic knowledge on democratic confederalism. But I want to focus on the autonomous administration in North and East Syria. That is where the ideas of democratic confederalism managed to flourish more, because the Kurdish liberation movement is very strong in Bakur and in Rojava. In Rojilat, so in Iran, the repression is very strong, and in Iraq, there is an autonomous region, a Kurdish autonomous region, but is supported by Turkey and US, and is that region is controlled by a family that is Barzani, that they are mainly based on oil, old economy, and they managed to have a quite autonomy from the Iraqi central government, but they don't have an innovative political project. So it's just the same wave of capitalism based on oil. And the part that is bordering with Turkey is under attack by Turkey that I mentioned before. So Rojava and Bakur are the examples where this example can flourish. However, Bakur is heavily repressed, as I mentioned before, with the attacks on the cities in 2015 and repression on the political parties. So again, northeast of Syria is where the magic is happening. So I've never been there. I have knowledge. I spoke with many people that have been there. I'm studying around, and so I'm taking some extract from the social contract. So through the years, they managed to have different forms of social contracts, and this is from 2023. So social contract is kind of constitution, but they want to be more linked to the French Revolution, let's say. So it's a social contract. And this is the opening of the social contract. For me, it's very, very important. So we, the daughters and sons of North and East Syria, Kurds, Arabs, Syriac Assyrians, Turkmen, Armenians, Circassians, Chechens, Muslim, Christians, Yazidis, in our awareness and belief of the duty upon us from the martyrs in response to the demands of our people to live in dignity, and in response to the great sacrifice made by the Syrians, came together to establish a democratic system in North and East Syria to form a basis for building a future Syria. Okay? So I also have other extras, and if you're interested in the Kurdish question, I strongly encourage to read the social contract, because this is an example, practical example on how to write this concept of different theory, different forms of living in something that is very alive. Again, a social contract is something that is written in the book, then you have to transform that in practice. But again, is another step from just writing a book, okay, or writing or discussing in a room, okay. And it's important because they don't say we, the Kurds, we want to democratic confederalism. They said daughters and sons, so it's not just men, okay, this is very important, but Kurds, Arabs, and so many other ethnic groups, and also different religions together. and they want to build a democratic system, okay, in North and East Syria for Syria, okay? So they don't want to break the borders.
They also declare being not racist, not discriminate, marginalize the other.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So there are other concepts in this chart. I will skip. There are a couple of more that are interested for me. So, okay, for me it was important, Article 13, decisions that directly affect communities are taken according to the principle of consensus. Are you familiar with the consensus decision-making process within social movements? Yeah, only 15 minutes more, then we are done. So it's not just majority, decisions are not made by majority rule, but with consensus. There are different techniques that we can put to raise the limit of the majority also, but consensus is going beyond. We are 3 people, 2 people have to impose on the third that is dissenting, okay? So the idea is to bring together, it's not just to all thinking the same thing, but it's to building together ideas that can be, to find an agreement that everyone can live upon, okay? So this is very important to have that. We are not by majority, but we are working with consensus. And then here is speaking about the environmental and social democratic life, okay? So the idea is to environmental democratic society and preventing unjust dealing with plundering and destruction of nature. That again, put that in the social contract is important. Okay, here, this is, I stop here because I found some references in the questions. Article 19, they're talking about the women. Article 20 is speaking about the resources. Natural wealth and resources belong to society. They are used and invested according to the needs of the regions and in a fair manner. This is enshrined in law. So one of the questions was, many of the questions were related around economy. So in democratic confederalism, there was also this understanding that a control of the economy by the party was not the right direction. And at the same time, they also realized that to give the power to the market was not a great idea as well, like the concept base of capitalism. So if it's not the state to control the market, and if it's not just let it free, what can we do? The idea is that the communities, they control the resources. So at the base, the assembly control the development of the economy. This is in theory. In practice, they are pushing a lot towards cooperative. Nothing new, but they are trying to go in that direction. So they are building cooperatives, they are trying to differentiate the monoculture that they have and to have a plurality of forms of different farmings, and empowering also women in these new cooperatives that they are constructing. If you're asking me what is happening in Turkey, there is a lot of repression. So they want to have alternative and different projects, but there the revolution is almost stopped because the level of repression is very, very high, without going too much in detail. So when I'm giving you the presentation, you have the link already for the social contract. I think that is the most important document that you want to read, just to have a glimpse of beyond the multiverse chapter that has been written. One of the person that wrote the chapter on the multiverse wrote also she finished the PhD in these years, and she wrote a book on the economy in Rojava. So if you're interested, you can also look into that. And I can give you the reference. Yeah. Have you heard about Jinwar? It's a small village in the northeast of Syria that is organized and built only by women, and only women can sleep with the kids, and men are not allowed during the night. So it's a form of communal living in order to show to the rest of society that women can be autonomous, and at the same time also is an experiment in order to empower women and to give the tools to them to live alone, okay? Or to live alone, to empower themselves, okay? And there are some works. There is also a researcher in Italy that is Fabiana Cioni that wrote her work, her PhD on gene war, that if you're interested, I can put you in contact. And there is this gene war is this small village that has been constructed in the last 10 years. Okay, I stop here. Can I go through some of the questions? And maybe you can think we have 10 minutes more. Okay. Okay. Regarding the democratic economy seeking self-sufficiency, so especially northeast of Syria, yeah, I forgot that. The economy is mainly based on oil. Okay. So the situation is very complicated because there is a complete embargo from all the different actors that are neighborhood to this experience. So Iraq closed the border. Syria, with Assad, closed the border as well. Turkey, they built a fence and a wall. So this experiment is under heavily constraint and is built during a civil war. So what they have oil that is kept also under the control of US personnel. Okay, let's say that there is the US Army in that area, but so the economy is mainly based on that. It's very cheap and can be sold quite easily and so on. However, so this is a contradiction. It's a huge contradiction, but they know that, and they are trying to shift their economy with more environmental friendly project and building a new relation with nature. So for example, this idea of the communes that are cultivating, farming for self-sufficiency, differentiating the crops and so on, that is one of the directions, but it's very hard. They know that there is this issue, but they're working towards that. And again, if you're interested, there is an article also working on this contradiction. So there is so again, there was a question about pro-Kurdish groups that are labeled as terrorists in Germany. So in all Europe, Kurds and movements close to the Kurdish question are criminalized. Fun fact, one of that book, Your Freedom and Mine, was translated in Arabic and was shipped from Egypt to Turkey to Germany. And 2,000 copies were blocked at the airport from the German police because the same book that you can have there and is for free online in English if you're interested. Your Freedom and Mine is quite a nice introduction to the Kurdish question, is for free online. So please go and check for that. So they the German police. They blocked confiscated the book because the books had the face of Abdullah Öcalan. So that was a terrorist book. I mean, I just is telling the story of the Kurdish freedom movement. It's not just a terrorist cookbook. So this is how the label of terrorism can be very misleading and can be used, for example, by the Turkish state to impose on Germany because of economic gains and because there is a huge Turkish diaspora in Germany to push this discourse. Yeah, you are someone is mentioning the justice system. I'm not very familiar, but I heard that there are some reparatory examples that I can, if someone is interested to that, I think Anna from Mexico asked me that. Yeah, if you're interested, maybe I'm not very familiar, but I know that there is some about alternative forms of not just put someone in jail. So yes, another concept, the commons, of course, are the base of this political project. But again, it's very hard to implement this under the constraint of the civil war and on the embargo that they have. Well, I spoke about also violence and self-defense. At the beginning of the 2000s, they have also a shift. The PKK started to speak about self-defense and not just about political violence. So they frame their army action as a self-defense, and they stop and refrain to do terrorist attacks towards the civilians, something that happened before. And they have a more defensive position compared to previous years. But of course, they are an armed struggle. They said we need to have guns, but at the same time, we want to mobilize society. Do you remember all the flags in Nevros? There are many different organizations that are working on all the different levels. That is the political with the parties. There are the lawyers. There are the artists, the civil society. They are all put in dialogue under the umbrella of the Kurdish freedom movement. Someone asked me also about the youth. The youth has a very important role. Maybe is influenced from the Maoist, the role of the youth for the revolution, and they have a branch and part of the movement very important that is autonomous is the youth. So even with the diaspora, they can organize by themselves. And also in the communes, they can organize by themselves. And sometimes they can take some decision that they fed up quite a lot, the adults, because they're young. So they mess around, of course. So your questions are many. I don't know. Yes, yeah, of course. Which one do you want that I cover? Okay, so maybe there is one that can be interesting to many. So many governments condemned the Israeli offensive. However, no one is giving a shit about the Kurds. Why? Because they are quite unique, as I mentioned, on Middle East, and because their political project doesn't align with any other actor in the area. They have a tactical alliances with US, that is true, and they acknowledge that. But they also know that if without the alliance with US, they could have been crushed by ISIS and by the Turkish state. So with the recent election with Trump. Already Trump betrayed the Kurds years ago, and the Kurds gave the green light to occupy a strip on the border. And now there is again a fear that NATO will allow Turkey to conquer even more territory in Syria. And this is also why one of the general of the YPG, well, of all the army, they said, he said publicly, just one day ago, said, we are ready to collaborate with Trump. Because they understand that the game is the great game in Middle East is very complicated, and they are ready to make concessions or to speak with all the different actors in order to survive, literally survive, because they're fearing for their life, not only for their political project, but for life. Any questions? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I get that. Nice to see it on paper, but
yes.
So many different cultures, religion, how
Mm-hmm.
does it actually get implemented? And the consensus.
Consensus?
Yeah, consensus. I think it's a pretty good way to work on a small scale, but if it's on a larger scale, how does it manage to work like this?
Okay. So, I want to say that I've never been there. My understanding is that, especially at the beginning, let's think about 2017, when they started to implement, when they started to discuss about these ideas in areas beyond the Kurdish populated area, there was some resistance from different tribes. And even within the Kurdish population, there are resistance even today. I mean, is mainly part of the movement, the cadre, if we want to use this key term from the National Liberation Movement in the 80s. They are the cadre, they are pushing this project. Okay, so we are talking of a liberatory project that is coming from a group that was not hegemonic, but in few years managed to have 1/3 of Syria. So there are a lot of resistance from the population, even from the Kurds. They have to learn, they have to practice this. So it seems that is a top-down approach to build a bottom-up approach. Okay? There is this risk, and it happened in the past. But is more and more common, and also the assemblies are more and more participated, and the role of women is more important. So there are there is reasons to understand that there is incorporation of different ethnic group, but of course it's hard. From the Kurds, it's easier to understand this from the Kurdish population. It's harder from the others. But from my understanding, they are going in the right direction, and they are incorporating more and more people in the process. Towards the consensus, I'm not again. I think that this can scale up. This is the same practice that also the Zapatistas are doing. It takes time, but also a practice that is much more rewarding than just the majority system. And the idea is that a decision that is being made through consensus is more effective. So it works more. So there are pros and cons, but it's not true that cannot work on a large scale. If there are assemblies, where you can send delegates that can be recallable at any time. There can be mechanism that even at the larger scale you can build something. And one of the traps that we have is that we need to have the state. We need to have a very large scale. We need to control everything. In fact, no. I mean, the decision that we need are only the one that we need on the ground. So the decision, you need to confederate more communes and confederate more regions only when it's needed, not in all decisions. Now we have the state because the state is controlling everything. But with this idea, and the same for the Zapatistas, you make decision only when it's needed at the level that you need. Maybe the neighborhood city doesn't need that, or maybe yes, it depends. Okay, so pro and cons for consensus, but for sure it's more libertarian, egalitarian, and it's a very good way to build a different world, I think. I will stay here for half an hour more.
I would like to ask you to highlight some aspects on the ecology movement inside the Kurdish,
Okay.
Because we have mentioned it, but I guess it's related to the oil extraction.
Yeah. I don't understand the question, sorry.
Oh, yes, because we said that three of the pillars of
Yes.
democratic.
Yeah.
One of them is ecology. So how is ecologists approach implemented, or how is it fought, or how is it like you could highlight some ecologists.
Okay. So this aspect is coming directly from Murray Bookchin and social ecology. So the idea is that there are two forms of different of oppression that are interlinked, and different crises that are interlinked. So nowadays, we are living an ecological crisis that is interlinked with a crisis within society. This is this is coming from the form of oppression that we have from men over the rest of society, and then the other oppression of the society on nature. So these two forms of oppression are generating crises that are interlinked. Okay, and we cannot solve the ecological crisis without changing our forms of society, how we produce, how we manage the political structure, and so on. So recognizing that, also in democratic confederalism, there is the idea that we need to change relation with nature. This is the theory. In practice, there are a lot of examples of resistance against mega project. For example, I didn't have time. This is a bridge from the Roman time, enclosed. This is Hasankeyf. This is a very important ecological site. There were the first people who were living there 5,000 years ago, something like that. And when I was there, they were refurbishing the bridge from the Roman time. And I thought, oh, that is nice. Why are they doing that? Oh, well, because they're building a dam, and all the area will be flooded. So they're doing that so the tourists can go and scuba diving there. Now it's underwater, and also there are all the archaeological sites. Because the Turkish state wanted to build this Elizeu Dam, that is a great example, again, for a group of form of different relation with nature. The sensibility that the Kurds have and the Turkish state didn't have. They want to implement this project in order to control the territory, to depopulate the area that is where the guerrillas were very strong, and to push away the population, at the same time to have a mega project that is supporting the Turkish state. So in the practice, there is little because they don't have a lot of possibility, but the sensibility is there. You're welcome.
Where we can find those books, you said those are available online?
Yes. So Your Freedom and Mine, you can search online. There is on my academia and ResearchGate for free. If you cannot find, I can give you the link. And the other one is Social Ecology and the Right to the City. That is, there are different essays. Two are on the Kurdish question and is with Creative Commons, so you can find online as well. Yes, but again, I can send you the links without problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
close.
But as I mentioned, I can say.
So we can close the.
Yes.
Okay, thank you to Federico, which gave us, I think, a lot of inputs to face to discuss several terms, several issues. We already mentioned the plurality, the diversity, the idea that we can have, and the complexity. I think that's one aspect that we didn't mention, but Federico highlighted is the complexity. Also to find solutions, to find alternatives is not so easy, and we have to, when we think about alternatives and solution, we have to face the complexity of our world in any case. So also some incoherencies or I don't know, yeah, different we have to face complexity simply not simply, but okay, thank you very much for your contribution, and we can stay in touch with Federico through email, etc. Thank you, and thank you to our public online. And we have closed the YouTube broadcasting, and we can continue the read if you want, if you